My name is Akila, and this is the Black Men's Redemption. In this podcast, we talk with real Black men on issues that affect Black men on a whole. Let the healing begin.
Welcome to another episode of the Black Men's Redemption. We are here with Brother Amin Ra, and he is a former youth leader and a self-learner of so many scholars of consciousness. Welcome, Amin Ra. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you. Peace and love to you, Akila. Thanks for inviting me on the show.
For sure. It's been a long time coming, and this is our fourth season and the third episode on emotional health for Black men. And that's something that, of course, is very dear to my heart. I've got a couple of brothers, and my father, he was our previous guest on this season. So I'm very conscious about Black men's emotional health. So I think my first question would be, what does emotional intelligence mean?
Well, you see, the first thing is, what I try to always do is use what came before me. Our parents, grandparents, ancestors, so on. So even though this term, I know it's like out there a lot, emotional intelligence, I know in our parents, grandparents' time, they didn't have the term, but it seemed like they had more emotional intelligence than we do today. So emotional intelligence is, I think it's more simple than complex. If you look at me and you see their facial expression, someone gets to know you, they should know if you're feeling down. They should know if you're feeling sad. They should know if you're feeling happy or joyful. This is that intelligence of the emotions of what you see when you're interacting with someone else. So that is the emotional intelligence and knowing how to respond to it. So if you're down, you're sad, I can come to you and ask you, hey, what's wrong? What's going on? Do you want to talk? That's the emotional intelligence versus somebody just seeing you and turning a blind eye, walking away, or talking to you like everything's normal when they see tears running down your face. So emotional intelligence is really just you being aware of the person's body language, their facial expressions, their mood, and even before we go there, emotion means energy in motion. So even when it comes to emotions, people need to understand it's an energy, and it's like almost reading an energy from the person. So that's what enlightened emotional intelligence would mean to me for seeing other people and so on and so forth,
Sure. I like what you said, energy in motion.
Yeah.
Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. Energy, like everything is energy. Energy never dies. It can only be changed, different forms, right? So a lot of times with the energy that's in motion, for instance, you wake up yesterday, you don't feel like getting up. That's a different energy. Another day you wake up, you're ready to go. That's a different energy and you can feel it. You can feel the difference. I'm in Canada, in Toronto, we get winter. That's a complete different energy than summer, right? So that energy in motion is the thing because it's going through us as we're moving, we're in motion. The energy is also in motion, it's not stagnant. Another factor with emotions is also to do with the cosmos. The moon, the sun, the stars, the planets have an effect here on Earth. And the more we learn about cosmology, the more we can understand, hey, why am I feeling like this today? Oh, I didn't know today's a full moon. I'm feeling like this. And we can watch the pattern of the cosmos and our own energy to see how it's affecting us. So that's where really you get the energy in motion because everything in the universe, the Earth is in motion. So we are also part of the universe. We are part of nature. So we are also that energy in motion as well.
Very good points for being part of the energy of the cosmos.
Mm-hmm.
So as energy and emotions are constantly in flux, how do we regulate? What does emotional regulation mean?
Well, to regulate your emotion would be like, let's say, for example, anger. It is an emotion. It is not a good emotion, right? But when you have that emotion happen, you'll notice some people may just walk off. They say, take a breather, go walk off, walk away around the block through nature, whatever you need to do to regulate you back to a balanced, more balanced state. Because if you're in sort of a negative energy, you can't really function or produce how you want to. They always tell you never make decisions when you're angry, never make decisions in certain emotions, because then it may not be the best emotion. So to regulate that emotion, you have things like a sound bowl, you have a tuning fork, there's sounds that can help you that with those frequencies. So that's really what you're trying to just regulate back to balance. So that way, that's you're regulating the emotion. If you don't control the emotion will control you. So you got to regulate it back before maybe you speak to your partner or speak to your family or wherever the person is. It's better to always regulate that emotion. It's sometimes easier said than done, but it's practice, right? To do that. So that's what regulating emotions would mean for me.
So how do you think this relates to men, especially Black men? You think that they give their emotional health the attention that it deserves?
Western society, I don't think we do as much. It's sometimes frowned upon. It's sometimes some sort of a programming of we're macho, we're men, and like we can't cry in public, we'll get shunned. So we're in a society that's sort of saying don't show your emotion, but if you don't, you're almost like a robot. You know what I mean? So we do need to take more time to help our emotional health, which is sort of tied into the mental health as well. But we do need time to do that. And I don't think we do it enough. We get into a cycle of going to work, cycle of, providing for your children, for your family, things of that nature. So we're just constantly on the go, on the go, on the go. And we don't take the time out to do some self-care for emotional health. It's very important because if your emotions are out of whack, you can't really function on the way you want to in your optimal way.
Seems like you can't function for yourself, show up in a proper way for your family.
Mhm.
So let's touch back on balance. You said coming back to balance. What does balance truly mean? Is it what, or in your opinion, what is the state of balance? It's obviously not going to be anger and it
No,
can't cause a sorrow, but is it this constant state of joy? And what does balance truly mean, emotional balance?
emotional balance. It doesn't have to be joy. Everybody wants joy, to be happy. Who wouldn't? But that is not actually balanced. It's a good vibration. It's very positive. But balance is like if you had my hands right here, right in this tip, right here is the balance. So it's actually a very good state to be in, especially as a man, and the things we think about, the things we go through, it can really help us. So it's not being on the negative side of the anger or sad or depressed, and it's not actually being so elated and happy. Right? It's in between those where there's just a calmness, where the mind is more calm, the mind is more silent. So now when you have like challenges, problems, things that occur in life, you actually can find a better solution in the balanced state than to be very happy. Because if you're very happy, be very positive, but then you're actually missing the negative parts that you can say, what about this or that? Then if you're on the other side of it, the other extreme, maybe thinking too negative and all of that, and now you're blocking yourself from the positive part. But when you're in the balance of it, you can look at the positive, you can look at the negative, and then you can weigh out the holistic thing. But if your mind is off balance too much on one side or the other side with the emotions, you're gonna miss something, and then it's, your plan sort of gets screwed up.
So, like you mentioned earlier, that making certain decisions in either anger or depression or the heights of giddy joy,
Right, great, yeah.
it's positive. And I always think about what emotions mean, you know. Often we're told that anger is a negative emotion. And I don't think
Hmm.
it's negative in the sense of good or bad, but negative as like on one side of the spectrum or the other. And I
Hmm.
think that, every emotion has its place,
Hmm.
but
Hmm.
it's what you do with it, If you're angry with someone, you can't be lashing out, but anger tells you that there is change that needs to be made, and you need to be strong about the change that is to be made. And
Hmm.
sadness indicates something as well, but it doesn't mean to stay in a state of depression, but rather, again, maybe something needs to change, or you need to address some things, take something.
Right.
And I feel like in this time and space, there's not enough analyzing the emotions. It's not just that I'm sad, I'm angry, and I'm going to respond in that emotion, but why
Hmm.
am I feeling that emotion? Do you think that's something, especially you mentioned being a former youth leader, is that something you saw amongst young folks?
Yeah, well, with young people, when you're more inexperienced, we were all once there, you can see how just making that decision in these kind of states of mind, and because it goes with your emotion, can be harming. You can cause harm to yourself or others. But I like the point you said about the emotion is indicating something. So, for instance, if there's anger or frustration, there must be a space where you can let that out. If it means you need to shout, you need to scream, whatever it is, there must be a space or a place where you can um, excel it, not hold it in. Because holding in that emotion, you could feel it in your heart. You feel that in your heart chakra. Your heart feels heavy or hard. You're not joyful. You're not as things. So when you're holding it, sometimes you have to release that emotion. Just like with sadness, like you're saying, you're crying or something. What does that indicate? Cries, get it all out. Get it all out. And I think those are the things where we look at like those negative emotions, like, oh, that's bad or whatever. No, we don't have to look at really good or bad, but at the same time, we know that in a certain state of mind and you make certain decisions, you can look back after getting angry and then realize, I shouldn't have said that to that person. I feel ashamed of what I said. I feel ashamed of my character, what I did in that state, because that's not really you. You acted out in that state. If you had released that emotion and then dealt with any challenge or difficulty or problem, it'd be much more, efficient in that way.
I also look at um how Black people on a whole, but men in particular, um,
Hmm.
regulate their emotions in society. Men are always supposed to be stoic and strong, or worse. That's on the better side, because you also find I don't know if you're of Jamaican descent, but I'm here in Jamaica, and you often see a whole lot of sexualized content pushed.
Hmm.
It's everywhere. It's everywhere. And I feel like there's only a few emotions that men are allowed to have in society,
Hmm.
and it's anger, love, and a certain amount of happiness. Not too much,
Hmm.
a
Hmm.
little. And I feel like, first of all, that creates a kind of robotic man, and it creates takes a young man who's learned how to interact with his emotions properly, takes him into a man who is either flies off the handle at the slightest inconvenience,
Hmm.
or who cannot emotionally connect to save his life. What do you think about how Black men interact emotionally with society, with peers in society, with women in society, with the children? How does society influence that space?
Okay, I see what you're saying. Like when you're saying like yes, my parents are of Jamaican background. I know about the dance hall and it, the genre of music and the pushing of the imagery, and it's it's all over. I think a lot of it, like you said, what we're allowed to express and show. So a lot of it, like we're allowed for some reason to show lust. That's like a cool thing. But until we understand that even sexual energy is very sacred, it's a sacred exchange between two people. The way society is influencing us, it's making it less sacred. So that energy, that space between the man and the woman, it's very sacred. It's supposed to be honored. One of my teachers, Dr. Llaila Afrika, said we should pray before having sex. And people were like stunned when he said they couldn't believe it. So I think the influence of society, like how we deal with the children, women, parents, it's not a good influence that we're getting from society. It's almost like we need more resistance from things because we're going into things not knowing what it truly is, what it can truly be. I'm also learning from a lady in West Africa. They're from the Dagara tribe. I was reading her book, right? And she was also explaining, her book is called The Spirit of Intimacy. If anyone ever wants to look at it, and I'll get her name um, to post after. But the point being is that she's describing to us that this is a sacred energy, right? So if we are just making ourselves less and less and devaluing, it's not good for us. It's not good for our health. So this influence that society is sort of pushing on us, we have to question it, and we have to look at why are they like trying to lead us? What direction is society trying to lead us, and where should we refrain? Because it's not a good energy to stay in all the time and to be in. It's no good because before you know it, people, any girl that passes by, guys are looking. They're just 24/7. You can't be stimulated like that, even though they're popularizing that, but it's not a good state for neither man nor woman to be in. Life is more than that. But once they keep doing this, pushing it, you will see now men going after younger women that are underage. You see that kind of stuff happening because they're just following what the society is giving them and influencing them to do until there's no stopping, there's no thought process to hey, slow down, stop, calm down. You don't have that. So to be honest with you, this society that we're in, I'm not for it. I don't see it as helping us. Some people may think, oh, that's a negative outlook. But if you really do look at the society we're living in, it's not helping us to achieve our top potential of what we can be, who we can be as men, and by us uplifting our vibration, because that vibration is just a lower vibration, an animal vibration instinct. It is not a higher vibration. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, so that's one of the issues there. Because I'm not saying there's something wrong with the act of sex, but sex 24/7 of images, it does you no good. The amount of energy a man loses when he even ejaculates, right? And if he's in a constant state of doing that, he's depleting his life energy, right? Men who watch this, they will know, because as soon as that happens, we're tired and we want to go to sleep. We get some of the best sleep, right? So we can't just keep on going and going and going and going. Even here in Toronto, they sell you these 5-hour power drinks. They have all these kind of stuff. It's very dangerous. You don't know what kind of chemicals you're putting into your body. They have what's that one called there? It's like forget what they call that one there, but when these guys take it for erections, all these stuff, it's racing their heart.
Yeah.
So this is not it's not worth it, man. It's just the push, the push, the push. Like I told you, the book I'm currently reading called The Spirit of Intimacy. She's saying you need to connect with a partner for spiritual reasons, not for the body of lust. You know, and I'm pretty sure like women have gone with BBLs, they're doing all of this, they feel less than, they don't feel valued unless they can show their body in some way. And this was not our Asian traditions and our Asian culture. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's bombarding, it's in the music, it's in movies, it's in TV shows, it's that's why we need a form of resistance and time where you can just, be alone, be silent, be calm, and you'll see how different when we practice these kind of things, how changes we could make, you know?
For sure. I mean, even I had two male friends who told me about their own journeys with even celibacy. And just they're like, yeah, I feel centered and they're able to collect themselves as young men because they were young men at a time. And
Mhm.
they said, I'm just gonna not do it for a while, somewhere between 5 and 7 years. That's crazy. And all these boys out here telling me that, oh, we have to do it, we have to do it. I'm like, y'all lying. Now I know y'all
Right?
lying.
You don't believe them?
That anymore. I don't believe the boys are always saying like, oh, you have to. That is just a product of the environment, the sexualized, overstimulated environment. And
Mhm.
you can't, here in Jamaica, especially speaking to Jamaica, because this is where I grew up, you cannot blame them to young boys because that's what they grew up with. That's what they were shown. Even
Right.
fathers and their older brothers, their peers, the society on a whole,
Mhm.
you know, we'll get to
Right.
that. Or this, it's so
Yeah.
distracting. A woman can't walk past and they're rubbernecking. They'll walk out into traffic.
Yeah.
But I guess
They'll risk their life for you.
it links back to what we are teaching the boys. So that's what something I want to tap into.
Mhm.
Um, my father has two sons, my two brothers, and I could see more with my younger brother because we're closer in age. Um, the intention, the way my father interacts with him intentionally to safeguard his emotions. We've been discussing it in the previous episode, if y'all want to check the previous episode. Um, how do you feel like that works? Like, what are we teaching our own boys? How can we teach them emotional safety?
Mhm. I want to touch on, I'm going to answer that question, but I like when you're talking about the celibacy in the sense of that as we learn and grow, a lot of men who practice celibacy, it's even in a book called Think and Grow Rich, which a lot of people have heard, they've read about. Practicing the celibacy, you're actually building your chi force, your life force. So a lot of men who have drive, ambition, passion for their goals of whatever they are chasing, they actually get a lot more drive and motivation through celibacy, which people like, we've been taught backwards. So even when you're saying like, how older men will even tell us, like, for instance, if something is wrong, like let's say colonization, for example, occurs, what happens is now the person who first started the colonization, they can step away because now the parent is going to teach the child and is going to be taught and taught and taught down the line. So even for myself, I'm 37, I may speak to men who are older than me, and I start to realize they're giving me bad advice. And usually you're taught like, hey, talk to someone older than you and they can help you. And I start to realize, wait a second, they're not telling me the right thing to do. They're giving me the same bad advice. So this is the difference between an elder and older. I was told, yeah, I was told by an elder that an elder brings wisdom. Someone's older is just the age number, is nothing there, right? So those are the things there. But that last question you said, if you could say it again, sorry.
No,
I just want to touch back on those. Yeah.
no, for sure. Well, how are we teaching our young boys as parents, as older siblings, as
Mm,
elders, How are we teaching them emotional safety? But even before we touch on that,
Mhm.
talked about the old people, not the elders, and their
Yeah.
nation. How do you, let's kind of trace that. Where does that come from? That being taught to fear emotions and only taught to have one. Where do you think that stems from?
Well, to be honest, I think it does stem from a form of colonized thinking, some sort of programmed thinking. Like I was saying, once one person has it, they teach it down the line, subconsciously, because they don't know they're doing the wrong. Whoever was taught it first, or however they got it, through force, through maybe it was through enslavement, through survival tactics within their society. However they got this, they just taught it down the line, and it hasn't stopped. So that's where they always say, you have to free yourself from mental slavery, right? So even though the chains are off of you, is it off of your mind? Is it off of your emotions? Is it off of your spirit? Is it off of your soul? And this is a work that some of us take on for ourselves, and some just continue going, right? So that is part of the clash of the problem. So yeah, like emotional safety. In other words, you're trying to say like what emotions they can show and can't show. Is that what you're sort of saying when you're saying that?
Well, yeah, who taught them?
Mhm.
Well, you mentioned that you said it was slavery. So in this new generation, how is that being adjusted? How are we fixing that?
Yeah, well, that's what we need to fix. I believe we do need to fix that. We do need to teach, especially young boys growing up. My thing, I always try to tell them from very young ages, you never put your hand on a woman, never abuse a woman. We try to teach them to be protectors of women. And I was raised like that by my mother, and that's something I think from their younger, if you can instill certain things within them, then uh, it will last, it will grow with them. You know what I mean? But if you start off bad, if you expose a child to, sexual images, because sometimes we don't realize children are very conscious. They're very aware. So people, be parents, family, friends, they may be talking on the phone around them, and it's not a conversation they're supposed to be hearing. You could be watching something on TV. It's not something they're supposed to be seeing. So they're just picking up certain things. And when they're picking these things up, they're gonna think, well, this is normal. This is how it goes. They're new to the earth in that sense, right? So they're thinking this is how it goes. When do they how long does that instill until they say, you know what, there's a process where I need to not follow this anymore. Some people do have that awakening, some people do not. But I think that's our job as Black men and Black women to sort of help them in that way, the best way we can, just keep on instilling it because it's almost like we're battling with society. So you're teaching one thing in the home, you're trying to instill something, and then they go to school and their friends, curse or swear or something, and then they pick it up and like, where did you get that from? And so it's a little struggle, but sometimes we just have to do our best, trust in our divine selves, trust in our God, just trust that we're doing the best we can and hope the best for them, because it is a battle where you're teaching one thing at home, you're doing the best, but then they have to go into society, and that environment is almost contradicting to the positivity that you're trying to instill in them, you know?
So I guess the next question would be, since a lot of these emotional patterns are taught, um, and we kind of discussed how men are kind of trained to see lust and anger and a little bit of happiness as masculine.
Hmm.
Let's talk about the masculine versus feminine emotions as they were, and like you define it as just human emotions.
Right. What you just said, defined as human emotions.
Yeah.
That's the key. And I think that's the problem what's happening in our society. We keep on labeling um this is male, this is masculine emotion, this is feminine emotion. So The crying, we're definitely as men gonna say that's a feminine emotion.
Wow.
But isn't that a human emotion? You know, if you have a family member that passed away, you don't grieve, you don't cry as a man, you're gonna hold that in. That's not good. You know, yeah, and then I'll hear women say, I'm getting into my masculine thing, and I'm like, don't say that, please. Just say something else. Find another way. You know, I don't say if I feel a certain way, well, I'm getting into my feminine. But you know, there's a science to, you know, like testosterone, estrogen. Men, we have about 80% to 90% testosterone. There is a little bit of estrogen in us, and the same thing with a woman. She's 80 to 90% um, estrogen, and there's some testosterone in her. Um, but if you went like if the hormones is way off balance, that's actually another thing too, eh? We have hormonal off balances and chemical off balances in the mind. If those aren't balanced, you know, if you put enough estrogen in a man, he's gonna start walking and moving like he's a woman. If you put too much testosterone in a woman, it actually changes your body. So these kind of things are very dangerous. You know what I mean? But back to the labeling of it. What if we get rid of the label and look at a human emotion, we'll have a greater understanding of not just ourselves, but of each other. You know what I mean? So if I'm only categorized as these are masculine emotions, then that's basically the border of saying this is what you can show or express, and everything else you better just hide it or discard it. Which, like I said, if you're holding things in, it can be very detrimental to you. And the same goes for a woman, right? If you're only saying, well, these are feminine emotions and she always needs to be soft. Well, one day she's gonna get angry. She's just a human being. One day she can get, it doesn't mean now she's masculine because she's upset or because she's, you know, like, so when we keep doing the labels is what's screwing us up. And it's even like hurting relationships, it's hurting dating, it's hurting these things because we're just labeling each other instead of looking at human beings. And we might realize as human beings, men and women have a lot more in common than we think. But if we just keep this label going, we're actually dividing ourselves more, you know. So that's one of the big problems is to drop the labels and look at human beings, you know what I mean? Because right now, if I get cut, blood is gonna come. If you get cut, blood is going to come. We gotta look at similarities because there's an enemy that wants to divide and conquer. And if we know that, we need to do the opposite and unite and use the similarities to unite versus following the program of dividing ourselves. Then now we are now conquering ourselves, like we are now destroying self. That it's not gonna work, you know?
I was saying the slave master don't need to do anything in this day and age. We
Mhm.
got it. We do it for him.
Right, right. That's the problem. And now when we try to do the black man's redemption, some people think, yo, we're crazy. But we're trying to solve the issue on our own and take responsibility and accountability to try to make the change instead of waiting for someone else to make the change. Why would the person who is dividing and conquering us want to help us? Let's do this ourselves. So, you know, that's the the black man's redemption. Just shout out to you with this podcast. It's really good, helpful. I like the name and I support it, you know?
One of the things I wanted to touch on is how men and women interact with emotions differently. Because while I do think that all the emotions are human emotions, I do understand that men, excuse me, interact with the emotions differently from women. Because not gonna lie, as a woman, any given day, well, not every given day, me personally, but we're ready to ball anytime. Watch a
Hmm.
sad movie, I'm a ball. I'm gonna just start,
Hmm.
you know. And
Yeah.
my brother, my partner would be next to me, be like, "Are you crying? It's not like that. It's not even like that. Are you
Hmm.
crying?"
Hmm.
And then again, the anger is also different. I think one of the reasons why emotional regulation comes into play. Not don't experience the emotion, but be wary because again, the way men and women interact with the emotion differently.
Mm-hmm.
outcome is also different. Because
Mm-hmm.
a woman could get angry. And I'm gonna say this, the women can come for me if they want to, women are very devious. Women may not be as outwardly, I'm not saying that men are violent, but we're weaker. So we're not going to be, let me put a pin up because I am in Jamaica and I know the Jamaican women, very times, but literally, we're not going to be all violent to fight physically.
Mm-hmm.
Things on the cover. Whereas men interacting negatively with their anger, it's more likely to become something more violent.
Yes.
Taking that into account of how men and women interact with their emotions differently, how would you like to add to that conversation?
Well, like you just said, what I would add to that is, yes, we know that women tend to be more emotional and men are supposed to be more logical. But you see, what happened is that we used to have a form of initiation. When we're growing up, we get initiated um, from the time you hit puberty. You would go into, in Asian African traditions and systems, you go into initiation. When another seven, let's say about 7 years, 7 to 9 years old, again, when you go up to about 14, 15, there's another initiation because you're at a different stage of life. And then another initiation again, probably when you're in your 20s. The reason I'm bringing that up is because without those systems of initiation, a man can get anger, um, all kind of different emotions, but without the initiation, he won't know what to do. So that's why he's saying, okay, let's just be violent. And it's very quick, very quick. You know, someone walk on you, bounce on you, yo, what you do? Yo, and you're ready to, it's not even worth it. Like you're going to 0 to 100 so quick for something that's not even worth it. But if you had initiation into what is a man, becoming a man, how do you handle things? How do you use your logical side since you're more in tune to that? But it seems like today it's no longer as much natural. It seems more natural for a woman for her emotions that like she's more emotional. But even now, men are more emotional and acting off of it and everything. Whereas if we have these initiation systems, they get the feeling of anger, they can experience it, but now they know, you know what? Wait, balance, logic, and now let me deal with the woman and let me speak to her, and you can find another way to solve a issue or a problem. So since women are mostly emotional, they also have to practice that balance as well. So not everything is just in the emotion, in the emotion, in the emotion, in the emotion, because you don't want to be pulled all over with these emotions. You want to just, reserve that. And we both have the logic and the emotion. So just because one gender is tending to this side, one gender is more tend to this side. That's why the balance that I keep speaking of, the tranquility, is so important. Because even for a woman, she can use her logic. She has a mind. She has a brain. She has wisdom. But if she's only in an emotional state all the time and she just in that, you would think like, okay, this woman doesn't know what like she's not, as if she's not intelligent or not, and they are. Our Black women are very intelligent. They're very smart. They need to take time to balance and regulate those emotions and even touch in more of their logical side. And if men are too emotional, then they're saying, oh, you're feminine. So you need to come back a little bit more balanced to your logical side. So those initiation systems that we had in indigenous cultures would help and train us into those things. So by the time we are so-called adults, these are things we would have mastered now. And it would help better for our families. It helps better in our societies and our communities of helping each other in that way, you know?
I love what you said. I love that you said that, women are capable of employing their logic because I was about to say, don't let them off the hook. Don't let them off the hook at all. You know better most times.
Yeah. No, they know, but they exactly because that's even a programming too. Women will know, but they'll play into the emotion because everybody knows, it's like a woman could do something wrong and she could just cry some tears and everybody in society is like, oh my God, what happened? And she's the bad one at that time, but she's just crying the tears and everybody's like, oh my God, what happened? And they just automatically sympathize for her. If I cry, everyone's like, what's wrong with him? Yo, man up, chest up, yo, what's wrong with you? Yo, get up. You know what I mean? Like, so there's a lot. It's this programming that at least we're acknowledging that it exists here. And, hopefully people who get to watch and look and learn can say, yeah, there's this programming going on. And first you have to be aware of it. So then you can be resistant from it. If you're unaware of it, you're just going to keep going. But once you become aware of something, then you can sort of give it an analysis and have, the process of how do I make the change? What can I do? And then, at least that's a beginning to start, But if you're not aware of this programming, you're going on like subconsciously going in this and not even aware of what's going on, why is this problem happening, or so on and so forth,
That's so much. And one of the things I wanted to touch on before we close is systems, because you mentioned initiation and rites of passage. Like my brother actually had the rites of passage at 7, my littlest brother. He went
Wow.
passage at 7, and the way it was done is that me, my mom, and my aunt, we gave him his last bath as a baby, graduating him from babyhood into the man's camp, effectively. And yeah, he was kind of informed that, from here on out, you're no longer a baby, you're a little boy, and your daddy's going to be teaching you. You're going to be directly under daddy. You're no longer under mommy's stress. And he's turning 18 this week. It's crazy. Oh my God.
Nice. Time flies.
Right?
Yeah.
And I'm so proud of the way he manages himself. He's a hothead. And he's, even through conversations now we're talking, he's like, yeah, I still get angry, but he can't. He's saying this to me now. So just slide off. And I wish more young men had that and had, the father to, my dad's very calm, very stoic, very cool, very slow to anger. And he has instilled some of that in my brother, who is naturally more hot-headed. It's so interesting to see the way he teaches him how to manage his emotions, and me as well.
Right.
How to manage our emotions. So that's what I wanted to ask. What systems in the diaspora can we employ? What is there and what do we need more of for these young men? Because oftentimes we look at Africa with the kind of rose-colored glasses and like, oh, if we employ all of these systems, that some of it isn't practical in this time and space as we are in the Western world. There's a lack of a lot of stuff. It's fight though, but what can be done here?
Right.
If you could even design a rites of passage, how would you design it for our boys here now?
Right. That's a great question. I think, like you said, we can look at, doesn't really even have to be African systems. We would look at some. We would look at some from indigenous communities here, even in Canada, around the planet. But what we always have to do is, like you said, adjust, because we are not in certain places. We are here. So we need to adjust to the environment that what we see and what we see here. What I see here sometimes is I think it's mainly the role models of young boys. So there may be someone putting on just like a mentorship group of an older man that's showing the younger boys to come there and these kind of things. It does take effort. It does take the parents to come out, bring the children out there, spend that time. Because even when I was younger, about high school, let's say, I never forget I met was an older teacher, at the time we were at doing the summer camp. But this guy, he was just like, you couldn't read him. He was just solid. He wasn't, it didn't look like he was mad, but it didn't look like he was happy. It didn't look like he was sad. It didn't look like you couldn't get it with him. And I kept trying to ask him, like, who are you? You know what I mean? Like, but it was just that he was so firm, strong in the calmness, in that calmness that he had. But you could tell he was stern, you know? And just being around men like that without them even speak, because he didn't speak much. He didn't speak much, but whatever he was doing, whatever he was trained in, I noticed, and it rubbed off on me a little bit, you know, for that summer camp that I was with him. And it wasn't really like he was trying to do initiation or rites of passage. But now that I'm older looking back, it's like it sort of was, you know. So sometimes I think getting mature men who have this already, just getting younger males around them in their environment, seeing how they act, see how they move, see how everything. These things, they say actions speak louder than words. These are some of the things you can take. It will rub off on the youth, and even if they don't understand it now, maybe in a few years they will get it, and they will start to understand. So there's a lot of those kind of groups that go on here in Toronto. People try to put on a brotherhood type of groups where men get together, or maybe women get together for them. So it takes the community to really establish it. It's not really one person that can do it. It's going to take a collection of like-minded people to be dedicated and say, let's get together every Tuesday or every Thursday, and let's do this and let's do that. So it's going to take a community that cares about their youth, that cares about our future, you know, and that's what we need to do. So we can borrow from other systems, but we can also adapt and see where we live. You know, I live in a city, which is very different from someone living in the countryside or the rural side of things. And and even taking the kids out of the city and going to a rural place, because one of the things where we talk about, I know we're talking about emotional intelligence, emotional health, but even with the mental health, we've noticed that there's studies out there that show a lot of people who live in the rural areas, they don't have the same emotional drainage or mental drainage as those of us who live in the city, because they're more around nature. So it's very funny that we are told a lot of things about nature is primitive, blah, blah, blah. But then we have to circle right back to it, because the people who are living as close as they can within nature, they are not having the same issues as the rest of us who are like deeper into the city, deeper into this matrix. You know what I mean? So I think that's where it starts. It's the community getting people together and, making this effort and staying dedicated to it. It can go a long way. It's sometimes it seems like, oh, it's just a little thing. It doesn't matter if it's 5 children you're helping or 25, you just have to go out there, do it, and you can see the changes. Because sometimes, I've heard a saying where like you can plant a seed, but maybe you may not be here to see it grow, but somebody had to plant the seed. Maybe someone else is coming later to water the seed, and maybe the third generation sees the fruits bearing off the tree, and I may never see it. But if I didn't plant the seed, we'll never get to that point, So that's what I would say to that there.
Sure. And I
Mhm.
suppose it just sparked something else for me. How men show affection. I feel like that's something that really needs to be, I don't know if talked about, but just something needs to be said about it, because oftentimes showing affection is one of those things that is seen as effeminate,
Yeah.
unfortunately. But again, it's how some parts it's a little girly, but I mean, at the same time, there are times when men need to show affection, and I think about men to their sons and their daughters. You might find, especially here in Jamaica,
Hmm.
this whole rhetoric of boy, I have to grow rough, and I don't know. What am I trying to say? So my dad's not really like a touchy-feely, lovey-lovey type of guy. He's just not like that. And so, we didn't get like huggy, lovey all the time, right? I have to pin him down to hug him. That's his own personality. But he still shows affection. Even though it's not always comfortable for him personally, but I feel like actively denying your son affection is right. And how is it done? Are we really so afraid of, are men really so afraid of being seen as effeminate to even show their grown son affection? I'm not saying you're going to kiss him like you used to do when he was a boy, but first, kiss you do. But your grown son, like hug your son, that heart to heart connection. I feel like it's so important, and it's an important part of even emotional regulation. And showing our boys it's okay to hug your friend. It don't mean nothing like that. Oh boy, it's okay to love him as your friend. And then it even, I feel like those who can show affection show up better even in their relationships with him. I'm not gonna be back on that.
Yeah, yeah. What you said is really key. It's really key. Like, yeah, sometimes it's a personality, like you were saying with your father. And sometimes people don't realize that sometimes the guys do just want a hug. But because of the society again, especially if we're gonna speak like Jamaican society, hey, what are you doing? Now you're supposed to be with a woman. What are you doing? So this kind of thing sort of stops that interaction where that's your friend. When I was growing up, your friend could put his hand around your shoulder, we're walking, but we say we're boys. So we still have to make it in a macho sense for whatever reason, but we're, hand around the shoulder, whatever. There was a one I learned about, like in Ethiopia, these guys will hold hands and walk on the street.
Yeah.
And the culture I was raised in and stuff was like, you crazy? You know what I mean? But they're showing everybody, this is my friend. This is like, heart to heart. This is my brethren. And like you're saying, then now afterwards, within a relationship, those kind of men will show more affection, right? Because if they're not afraid to show affection to the friend, then when it comes to relationship, what would he hold back for now? You know what I mean? So it's very key. But like I said, the societies and the environments are very different. So if someone holding hands in Ethiopia, people are used to that. Nobody's gonna shun you or ask, what are you doing or what? No. But if you're in Jamaica, if you're in another place, that's gonna be different. So like what we're saying earlier about adaptation, what can we adapt? What can we change? How do we eventually change the society where that won't be a problem, and a lot of times growing up, a lot of younger men, sometimes they just wanted a hug. They really do. They just don't want to look away about it. They just want someone to be there to say, yo, it's tough right now. I'm going through a lot, man. And you talk to your friend, your brethren, and you get that kind of connection, this is my boy, this is my brethren, this is my friend, that meant something, and if that gets lost there, then when you're interacting now with the opposite sex, how much more is lost then, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's definitely a thing because even growing up in school, if there was like 3, 4 of us as friends, 5 of us as friends, we sort of get labeled as a gang, which was so wrong. You're not a gang, but this is just your friends, your group of friends. Women have group of friends, so on and so forth. This is very important for like human beings to have these type of connections, especially in today's world where it's just social media, phone, the this, the that. And the more and more you have social media, studies show that the more the person feels depressed. So the more Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook, the more and more and more and more you have, is the more depressed you are. is a very interesting study. And they tell you this, they don't hide it, but the same society, they're gonna come out with another one, and you got to get on that one next. So we have to stop and say, how do things make me feel? You know, one thing I found, because another emotion we didn't really talk about too is anxiety. You know, that's another one too, where I realized when I turned down the notifications on my phone, I was less anxious. You know, it sounds crazy, but until you do it or do try and do some of these things and you notice for yourself, then you start saying, let me do these things where for me that makes me feel better, you know, versus just going along. Because yeah, I turned down the notifications on my phone, and all of a sudden my anxiety level went down. When it was all the way up, it was like boom, doom, doom. There's an effect with that sound and the mind, and you know, and after a while you realize, like, why am I so anxious or something? And you realize, wait, so it's just some little things that we can do that can really help us, you know? So we got to keep the human connection. We got to keep empathy for our brothers, our sisters. Once we lose empathy for another human being, we're almost becoming like not human in a sense. We're almost losing certain values. So that value of being empathetic, again, some people look at that and say, oh, that's a feminine trait to be. No, it's a human being, you know, and the more we look at ourselves as human beings and the connection that we all have together, that's what we need to strengthen, because right now it's good, the technology, we have Zoom, we can connect from far away, no problem. But it's always better, even artists who have made music have said, it's better when we are in the recording studio together. There's a different energy in motion there versus, hey, I do mine, you do yours, put it together, sample it up, put it together. Okay, but it's not the same energy. So that human connection of energy is very important for, I know we're speaking on Black men, but it's important for Black women. And we have to continue that. No matter how much technology we think we have and how great we are, we have a technology inside of us that is way greater than the external technology. Every external technology we have it internally. But we don't have the time, or not in the same time period where we have our mystery system schools, where we have our things where, you know, I could speak to you in mental telepathy. I didn't reach that level yet, you know, but there was a time where this was real. And now today people think it's a myth, and we need these phones, we need the external gadgets, we're so addicted to it. We need to deal with our internal technology, and that will, you know, it's way better. It's a much better vibration. It's a much more better quality of life, you know, to speak with your mother, speak with your father, speak with your uncles, your aunts, your nephews, your nieces in person versus everything online, and you're never there in the physical with them, you know?
This has been such a great episode. It's been a pleasure having you on. I really
Thank
thank you
you.
so much.
Say again, I missed that.
Oh, I was just saying, I think we covered so much, and it's been a pleasure having you on.
Thank you, thank you. I'm happy for this conversation too. It's good conversation, you know?
And I'm looking forward to having you on again. Do you have any closing remarks?
Um, Not really. I think the last thing I said about the human connection is really the key to everything. And everybody just drop the labels and look at humanity, human beings, look at all of us together, look at the similarities versus the differences. Because like I said earlier, if someone's trying to divide and conquer you and you're aware of that, you don't follow it. You do the opposite. You use the similarities and you unite. And I think as long as we can do that, well, you know, there will be hope for the future, for humanity, for us, you know. So I would love to come back to the show, another topic anytime. Llaila Afrika, a great host. I support what you're doing as the Black Man's Redemption. I might have to do the Black Woman's Redemption. I don't know.
Do it.
You know, you know. So yeah, those are my closing remarks, and I'm just happy to be a part of a positive change, you know? Thank you.
So have a great day.
This has been another episode of the Black Man's Redemption. If you have any questions or comments or want to pose a new topic, leave a message for us on one of our podcasting platforms or leave a comment or direct message at our Instagram at Black Man's Redemption. We'd like to thank our guests for their contributions and our listeners for their questions. Now is the time for healing. Let it begin.